So to moderate the panel, I'd like to call upon Mr. Sarat Chandra, co-founder, India Blockchain Forum. The speakers of this panel are Mr. Chandan Khaitan, CEO, Muthoot Finance Corp. 1, Manish Bhatia, President, Technology, Analytics, and New Capabilities, Lending Cart, Mr. Krishnan Vishwanathan, Founder and Executive Director, Ring, Ms. Radhika Binani, Chief Product Officer, Paisa Bazaar, Mr. Sudeep Garg, Vice President, Nucleus Software. Thank you, speakers and Mr. Moderator, for being here today and sharing your valuable time and expertise with us. Just a kind reminder that we have around 40 minutes for this panel discussion, and we could take some questions in the last 7 minutes or so. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. So this topic is a pretty interesting one given the developments we have this week. And if I can reflect briefly upon the growth of digital lending as an industry, one of the reports of RBI says that fintech-led lending can exceed traditional lending by 2030. It was released in association with Center for Advanced Financial Learning and Research. There are enough tailwinds driving it, right? But there's one point we need to collectively ask is, should we be chasing growth at the cost of compliance, and how we can drive responsible growth in the industry? So with this particular context, let me begin by putting the first question to Radhika. And Radhika, your opening comments on the topic, and what do you see the role of financial data interoperability in driving digital lending forward? Your thoughts, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I think while the lending topic seems to be the last topic, but I think there's a lot of action which is happening in this part of financial services. Happy to have been part of it for the last 9 years, especially in FinTech. I think across all 5 Ps, I've just changed quarters for 4P model to 5 Ps of financial services. Across all of the 5 Ps, there's a lot of action. The first P which I'll talk about is the products. I think traditionally we knew a specific product, whether it is a term loan or unsecured personal loan. But I think there's a lot of innovation which is happening with respect to, somebody was talking about daily returning loans. There's a payday loans. There's a lot of action in terms of products. Wherever there is segment gaps, there is innovation gaps. We are also co-created a couple of products along with banks partnership. That leads me to the second P, which is partnerships. We at Paisa Bazaar have worked with around 50-60 lenders across 9-10 years. And without partnerships, the ability for us, what do we do best to be able to get customers onto our platform, look at analytical models on top of it, and then direct the consumers to the right set of products. So I think the partnerships as the ones which is, and different types of partnerships are brewing. So that's when the open banking, which we are talking about. What is essentially open banking? Any of the large platforms, whether it is Amazon, Facebook, Paisa Bazaar, any of these have consumers coming onto the platform. Each of them have financial needs. So we do what we do best, and then the banks or the financial entity give us the know-how of underwriting models, and then we have the ability to connect with the consumers, do great products and programs for them, and also close the loop of entire life cycle management. So I think partnerships is where there's a lot of action which is happening. The third P, of course, is processes. Post-COVID, we've seen the acceleration of digital processes. eKYC is being adopted. I think enough is talked about digitization in lending, and people are talking about getting a gold loan in 25 minutes. So I think everything is worth 50 lakhs. So everything is here and now possible. And of course, the fourth P is about patterns and the data. So no conference would be complete without talk of data, AI, ML. While we talk all of those words, but of course all of us have our abilities to figure out how to use data best, how to improve efficiency using data and consumer patterns, reading consumer patterns. And of course, fifth P, which is policy. I think there are a lot of work which has happened, whether it is establishing Aadhaar, that is oft talked about, then about how the policies have been ensuring that we are able to grow, improve under-penetration and keeping it with lesser risk. So I think that would be, I think we are all happy to be in part of these kind of lot of action where it is happening, and I'm sure there'll be a lot in the future.
Thanks, Radhika, for your inputs. In fact, partnerships is going to be key, and with partnerships, let me come to Chandan next. So Chandan, I mean, given your background on the consumer side of the business and with your new instant in Muthoot, how do you see customer centricity as maybe the driver of digital lending, and maybe if you can focus upon the MSME financing gap and how Muthoot is trying to navigate that piece.
So, so I was actually talking to you backstage that I represent FMCG and retail, which is a lot to do with consumers. And banking as an industry is in a flux point of becoming more customer backwards, where with the help of digitization or digital, which the consumer wants to adapt to, and of course, after the whole COVID thing, we as representative of banking industry started looking at being more solution-oriented thinking of consumers and using technology as much as possible. And as I represent Muthoot Papachan Group, which is like there in the country for more than 140 years, one of the things which we have been doing actually is working with common man and SMEs to create financial inclusion in this country. And like, for example, we have, if I put our secured, unsecured, and microfin business, we have more than 7 million customers. And on a daily basis, we meet about 150,000 customers on a daily basis. But all of this was happening through our branch network. And most of them are SMEs. But what we have done last year or so, we have actually pivoted and created a FinTech, which is a homegrown FinTech, which is what I represent, wherein there were 3 strategic pillars there. One was that customers who were consuming our services, wherein they had to come to our branches, like any other banking service, how do we take this service to consumer's house? And with the motto of whenever, wherever, and however. So that's one thing. Second is, and I am a big fan of this whole India stack which we talk about, wherein this whole public-private infrastructure which has been created. So we are leveraging that at a very large scale and trying to solve consumer problem. Like Radhika talked about, it is not about just taking gold loan coming to the branches. We have taken gold loan at consumer's house using technology now. And finally, I would say that world is all about being participating in ecosystem. And there are a lot of big tech ecosystem which is there globally as well in India. So we are using our own technology platform to being participate on those larger ecosystems. And that's what Radhika was talking about, the whole partnership thing. So it actually creates a large momentous occasion for us to be working with many of these platform partners and reaching out to the consumers and solving what they need. Like for example, Radhika talked about EDI loan. So we have now created a partnership, a very large scale partnership where we are taking EDI as a loan using technology to small kiranas at their doorstep. Yeah.
Thanks, Chandan. And since ONDC is again one of the prime discussion points when it comes to fintech and lending, what's your approach towards ONDC and how do you see ONDC enabling more use cases, especially given the way OCEN hasn't taken off? Can ONDC be an enabler there?
So, see, I have been part of Flipkart in my past life, and ONDC is one which is very revolutionary as far as the thought process is concerned, because at the end of the day, the whole approach towards ONDC was that how do we actually help SMEs to protect their turf and actually look for protecting their profit share as well. And if it works well, because it's still in a nascent stage, but if it works well, it certainly provides a field where our SMEs can compete. And one of the beauty of ONDC as a network actually is that it is the platform where the transaction, because we have the visibility of transaction, we can actually lend on those transactions. So the approach which I will be actually saying, and all of us need to look very closely, that how this whole network gets created, where legitimate transactions are being powered through ONDC, and we as lender can actually participate, again using India Stack, so that we will be able to work very closely with SMEs.
Yeah. Thanks, Chandan. And from OCEN, let me come to account aggregator. Manish, you have been the early adopter of account aggregator. Tell us more about your journey, your experience, and why account aggregator hasn't scaled, or what can be done to improve that option there.
Yeah. So thanks for having me on the panel. So Lending Card has been an early adopter of account aggregator. So, we have pan-India presence without any retail branches. So everything is digitized. So we believe a lot in automation, running machine learning algorithms. So even prior to account aggregator scaling, we used to use net banking. We used to use uploaded PDFs to actually get the bank statements. Account aggregator actually has really helped. So it's a consent-based architecture where you could pull bank statements, mutual funds information, and various different information about the customer, which actually gives you a holistic view of the customer so that you can underwrite better, probably understand the customer better. So we have been early adopters. We were pushing a lot, but there are some kinks, I would say, right? So as banks are adopting to account aggregator, we also find stability issues. So there are different banks that are live on account aggregator, but their uptime's not that great. So we always have to have a plan B, either fall on PDFs, things like that. So that has sort of not helped us scale. The other pieces are, there are some very small issues where when you get the bank statements from account aggregator, the bank number is masked. And because we have an automated process, right, what we do is we use that bank number to validate whether the bank account provided is correct or not. Now, not getting the bank account, which we actually got from other means, sort of brings friction into scaling that product. So there are these small kinks that we're running into, which has actually prevented wholesale adoption, but I'm quite optimistic about being able to actually use it.
Thanks, Manish. Now, let me come to Krishnan, and since I spoke about putting importance to compliance when we are driving growth, what in your view is the importance of disclosure, risk management, especially given the RBI guidelines on FLDG in June last year, right? How is that shaping maybe compliance in the industry in general?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to the conference. Let me say to begin with, the digital lending guidelines, when it came out last year, it was a very seminal moment for the industry. I think for the first time, digital lending was officially recognized as a sub-industry, right? And there was a set of rules governing a specific segment of lenders. The growth, I think the fundamental concern that the Reserve Bank has, and I think all of us as industry participants need to have is, the growth in India is always going to be unending, and that's the opportunity that India provides, right? I remember having a conversation with an RBI official, and she said sarcastically, you put whatever in front, you'll always find a taker in India. So to say that the opportunity is there. Therefore, ensuring from the government's perspective, regulators' perspective, that consumer interest is foremost, and it's not about just leveraging an opportunity to create value for organization, is where I think the genesis of digital lending has been. And for people like us who's been around for now 7 years, just putting compliance, and I'll be honest that our sensitivity to compliance today is more than what it was last year, even though we believe we are one of the more credible players in the market. And the simple thing being, now for the first time, we have a framework to assess ourselves. And I know we are still taking more steps. We need an SRO within digital lending. Hopefully it will come in place within the next 1 year. But this entire architecture and just sensitivity to saying customer first, disclosures, transparency has brought about a level playing field. And it's just another way to look at what India Stack is, right? India Stack made data utility. And then you need to use analytics and innovation on top of that utility. This compliance framework again makes it a utility. You have a level playing ground in terms of disclosure. Now, how you differentiate yourself to consumer is the different propositions you bring, the innovation in the product you bring. Ultimately, I think what digital lenders do, what we do, we don't have a one-size-fits-all as a product, right? We've been focused very much on the mass market segment. That's a segment that was largely excluded from the credit mainstream. And we've been able to innovate multiple different archetype of products within the mass market segment, right? Whether it's a gig worker, whether it's a small shop owner, whether it's a self-employed person. And while doing that and having this compliance mindset is, I think in the longer term, what is a $11 billion industry? I'm talking about the unsecured personal loan industry today. There's a potential for it to grow by at least 3 to 4x over the next 5 years. But now a healthy growth where there is prudence, risk, and compliance that is balanced along with the growth architecture.
Thanks, Krishna. Let me come to Sudeep. on, because you have software which can help banks and BFCs and other players to issue loans digitally, loan original systems, loan management systems. Tell us more about your experience and how this industry is shaping up, right? And what are the tailwinds driving the growth of the industry?
Thanks, Sharad. We have been working with financial institutions, banks, NBFCs for last 30 years and providing solutions to automate their loan process end to end. We have seen a huge transformation and especially in last 5-7 years, where the industry is moving more towards digital lending. That has become a buzzword. And with a lot of emphasis on data availability, data, India stack is available, a lot of partnership happening, AI, ML is being there. And as Radhika rightly said, partnership is the key here. Partnership between various ecosystem players, landscape players, be it FinTech, government, regulators. So regulators and government, they provided the infrastructure in terms of India stack and other things. Regulator is very, very agile and proactive in coming up with new guidelines, whether it is with respect to digital lending guidelines, whether it is fair lending practices, co-lending. All these things are shaping up the digital lending ecosystem very, very effectively. Now, on top of that, fintechs are, I think, at the core of the whole ecosystem, because they are the ones who are innovating and helping the traditional lenders serve the customers who are underserved and unserved. Fintechs will be the core and will be the innovators using the data which is available. Apart from the traditional financial data, they are also looking at alternate data now. A lot of alternate data, so even the customers who never had the financial history, digital traces of their transactions are able to get loans now. So in the whole ecosystem is moving very, very fast. Regulator is moving very swiftly and announcing these things. The challenges, as we see, are with respect to data privacy. That is, but with the data protection bill underway, we hope that that worry will also be taken care of very soon. We have issues on, we may come up with issues on consumer trust when a lot of data is available with our loans partners, fintechs, and with just one consent, they can pull out data from everywhere available in the ecosystem. Consumer trust, we need to educate. And as backstage we were discussing, and Mr. Sorry, my fault, from Muthoot, he mentioned that consumer trust and education would be a key. It's absolutely essential, because otherwise, if consumer trust is not there, or if there is a misuse of the data, that will make the whole thing go to a backtrack. So what we have been seeing, a lot of traction with our customers on digital lending. Everybody is talking about digital lending. We have been working with them. So digital lending is essentially where they go mostly to, and that is happening mostly in assisted mode. It is very little of it is happening where customer is self-sourcing a loan application and doing it on its own. It is more in assisted mode where somebody is visiting customer's place, and that is the segment that we want to serve. That is the segment we want to serve. As we have our vision, the India vision is to become Viksit nation, Viksit Bharat by 2047. What is important is that MSME, which forms a critical part of our economy, needs to grow. There is a huge credit gap there. And these are the guys to whom we need to provide the credit at affordable prices, easy access, efficiently managed from a lender's perspective. Your cost of transaction cannot be high because these are small ticket size loan. You cannot price it very high because in that case it becomes unviable for MSME to take that loan. So digital lending is the answer, where you have the whole process automated, minimal paperwork, that's most efficient, cost effective, and transparent.
Yeah, thanks, Sudeep. Since you talk about alternative data sources, so there's a significant adoption of algo-based lending, and it has also kind of got attention of the regulator, where the idea is to put a check on these algorithm rights, because most of these algo-based lendings often lead to NPAs. So just wanted to have views from the panel. What's your thoughts on algorithmic-based lending and how it can be made more responsible and inclusive? Just your thoughts. If you want to start.
Okay, I'll start. While we are not a lender, but I have a view on this. For example, data coming out of account aggregator. There's so much data which comes, there's a lot of algorithm which goes into that, which I think the regulator has not put a stop on all algorithm-based data, but I think you'd have to be discerning on what kind of data is. So what I would assume is wherever there is no lending footprint for the consumer, it's a starting point of cash-based lending. I think the government is promoting cash-based lending, especially in the MSME context. So that's something which is a great start for people who do not have credit lines. And then there are near financial services kind of data, right? Whether it could be your utility payment, your credit, prepaid top-ups, all of that. So I think near financial services, I personally believe there is a scope of sort of looking at using the data to be able to measure credit worthiness. And then the last side would be all of the social data, which I think there's still some time away. There's more digital footprint which is available with the consumer in these realms of financial services or nearby financial services before we get into some of the other social network kind of data. So that's my thought.
I think that's more relevant for new to credit customers as well. Yeah. Chandan, your views on that?
So, in my mind, there are three specific things which we should be looking at. One, if we look at a macro level data, financial services represent about 57% of our GDP. And the credit penetration in this country is far lesser. And as one of the panelists actually talked about, we moving towards Viksit Bharat, availability of credit needs to be much more, I would say, democratized. It needs to have much larger penetration. And algo-based credit, or I would say tech-based credit, is possibly the only answer we have. Because we have been seeing that the kind of credit growth we have seen in last 50 or 60 years, what we have seen in last 7 years possibly is more or less the same, right? So we certainly need to go there. Interestingly, or I would say a very encouraging part is that regulator and Government of India at large has been promoting it. Of course, this promotion doesn't mean that you can actually take the whole guardrails or you can just put it in say, suppose, a park. You really need to be within the boundaries. And we all need to be, as I say always, that you need to be a responsible lender. So, under the guardrail, using technology and algo to do the lending will certainly help us as an industry to increase the penetration, which possibly is one of the biggest pillar for we moving towards Viksit Bharat. And lastly, I would say, and I was actually talking to a few of the panelists backstage, that there is a huge need of we as an industry talking about the trust and transparency or wider level awareness. And I'm particularly a big fan of this whole mutual fund sahi hai, right? That is what created a lot of awareness. I think we as a financial services industry need to take that on our shoulder to go out and tell consumers that not everything is gloom and doom and not that everybody is actually siphoning off your money if things are being done in a particular manner, and people should go out and actually try it out.
Thanks, Chandan. We have close to 4 minutes left now. So Manish,
Can
quickly
I
your
just,
views, followed by Sudeep and Krishnan.
Can I just address the
Yeah,
question
please.
on, so as in our organization, there is a belief that, data is either zero or positive value, right? It can never be negative. So we are big believers in statistics. It may throw up unintuitive answers, but invariably your intuition is wrong. That's the way we see it. Algorithmic trading by itself is not a sufficient requirement, but it is increasingly a necessary requirement, as Chandan said, to cater to a set of segment where there is a paucity of information. And as long as you don't fundamentally violate, the FOIR norms, it's been there for decades. And within that, there are still going to be choices you have which customer to serve. Algorithmic, credit that's where it plays a role. So I think if you want to democratize further, if you want to go, even now I feel the entire FinTech digital lending industry, we say, rural. For us, rural is actually semi-urban. We've not gone rural yet. And the deeper you go into the interiors, there's more paucity of information. There are different archetypes of employment. I think algorithmic credit is the way forward. That's my view.
Thanks. Manish, your views?
Yeah, no, completely agree with what Krishnan is saying. With machine learning, its ability to consume incredible amount of data, segment it, run performance test on it, and do credit-based underwriting. I don't know if there's a substitute to that now. And with the access to account aggregator, with access to credit bureau pulls, with access to some social pulls, with access to census-based data, a human's ability to look at that data and make a judgment call is always limited. So I think it's a great input to credit underwriting, might not be sufficient. But for us to sort of make credit available to all of India, all of Bharat, I think it's absolutely necessary.
Thanks, Manish. Sudeep, your closing comments?
I agree with what Manish just said. It is the score coming out of alternate data should only be in addition to other factors. And it's not the only thing that you need to look at. We have seen people using data from geo tagging data to contact data, social media data being used for alternate data points. The algorithms definitely are important, and one has to keep rechecking whether how it is working. You will have some algorithm you need to backtest on your data, existing portfolio, not only from a good customer's behavior perspective. What is happening in the industry that I have my own data, I have taken decision of go and no go. Then I look at the customers whom I have given the data, and then I look at how many of them have gone bad and how many are performing well, and then I try to work out my models based on that. That is very good. You can always look at to whom I should not give loan and to whom should I give loan from this data. But what people don't do even today is customers whom I have not given loan, I have said no. Now, it's not that nobody has given them loan and all of them are bad. That is another way of looking at the data, that somebody whom I have not given loan, if anybody else has given loan around the same time, how are they performing? And build your algorithm using that data as well. So algorithm would be the key, and getting the right algorithm would make you the champ.
Yeah. Thanks, Sudeep. So with this, we'll be closing this session, and I would conclude by paraphrasing what Chandan said. So to drive responsible lending, I think we have to use technology and work within the confines of guardrails to make it happen. So thank you, everyone, for listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for sticking to the time. Really appreciate you taking out time and sharing your expertise with us. Please remain on stage as I call Ms. Monica Jasua, FinTech expert and consultant and advisor to the board member at FinTech Festival India. Ma'am, could you please felicitate our speakers? Just give me a minute. I know it's been a very long day and you waited you all waited for the entire day to be here with us. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate. And thank you so much, audience, for being so attentive and staying and sticking around. A huge round of applause for yourself and also for our speakers on the panel. Thank you very much. Let's continue with the applause. तालियों में कंजूसी नहीं कीजिए, तालियों से ही प्रोत्साहन बढ़ता है सबका. सो तालियां बनाए रखें, तालियों की गूंज साथ में आनी चाहिए. In this panel, it was often told about Viksit Bharat, and that's the theme that we'd be discussing shortly. And let's... नहीं नहीं